"You will find, grandmother, that I have no objection to marrying her," the Duke of Thane said. "I object only to being sold. There is a difference, and I intend to know which of the two this is before I stand up in a church." "And how," said the dowager, "do you propose to discover that?" "By asking her. Ambrose, the girl, is 24 years old, her father is bankrupt in 3 counties, and she has 4 unmarried sisters. If you ask her whether she loves you, she will say yes, and she will be perfectly right to, and you will believe her for a fortnight, and then lie awake at night the way you have lain awake for 11 years. He did not answer, because there was nothing to answer. 11 years. He had been 27, and he had been engaged for 5 months to Lady Sabra Vane, who was the most admired woman of her season, and he had gone out onto a terrace at Thanewood on a June night to fetch her shawl, and had heard her say, on the other side of a yew hedge, to a friend, in a voice of absolute good humor, "Oh, he is not so very bad. And one must pay something for a coronet. I dare say he is the cheapest price anybody has ever paid for one." He had gone back inside and handed her the shawl and asked after her mother. He had ended the engagement in writing 3 days later without one word of explanation, and he had let the whole of society decide that the Duke of Thane was cold, proud, and unaccountable, which was easier than the truth. He had not asked anybody anything since. Now his grandmother was 84, and had begun to speak about the succession in the tone of a woman making arrangements, and the Thane name and 40,000 acres would otherwise go to his cousin Cashin. And there had been a negotiation, conducted entirely by attorneys, with Sir Rowland Keel of Keel Ashby, whose estate was mortgaged past saving, and whose eldest daughter was to come to Thanewood for the month of June, so that the 2 parties might become acquainted before a September wedding. Miss Rosamond Keel. He had seen her twice in his life, across rooms, and remembered a straight back and a plain green gown. "There is a way to know," Ambrose said. His grandmother put down her chocolate. "I do not like your voice when it does that. You will tell the household I am gone to London on business until the 20th. You will receive her yourself. You will apologize for my absence and beg her to consider Thanewood her own." He turned from the window. "And Braddon shall put me on in the gardens as a new man under Mr. Ferris. There are 19 men in those gardens, and half of them were taken on this spring. Not 4 people in this house could tell you their faces. She has never spoken to me in her life. She will not know me from a hedge. You are 8:30. Yes. And a duke. Yes. And you propose to spend a fortnight," said the dowager, "in a smock, spying on a girl." "I propose," Ambrose said, "to find out what she is like when there is nothing whatever to be gained by it. It is the one thing no man in my position can ever be told. Not by her, not by you, not by anybody." He put his hands behind him. "If she is what I fear, then we shall part with civility, and I shall settle £4,000 on each of her sisters, because they have done nothing to deserve their father, and I shall not marry at all. And if she is not, then I shall have been unpardonable," he said, "and I shall have to tell her so and take what comes of it." Braddon the steward was appalled. Mr. Ferris, the head gardener, was worse than appalled, and it took the promise of the new glass house he had been asking for since the year 12 to reconcile him. So on the 2nd of June, when Miss Rosamond Keel's hired chaise came up the beech avenue at Thanewood Park, the Duke of Thane was on his knees at the far end of the south walk in a coarse smock and a broad hat, thinning carrots, with earth to the elbows and a blister already forming on his right palm, going by the name of Amos Reed. He did not see her arrive. He heard about it at dinner in the bothy, where 19 gardeners ate bread and cheese and bacon, and discussed the visitor with the frankness of men who did not know a duke was sitting on the end of the bench. Not much to look at, said one. She's a look about the eyes, said another. She's here for the money and good luck to her, said a third, for she'll want it. There's 5 daughters at Keel Ashby, and the bailiff's been in twice. Poor lass, said Job Halliwell, who swept the yards and had lost his left arm at sea 19 years before, and was accordingly the lowest paid person on the estate. Coming into this house on her own. I'd not do it for 10,000. Why not? Said Ambrose. Job looked at the new man with mild surprise. Because it's a cold house, Reed. Handsome mind. Cold. His Grace don't speak and her ladyship's 84, and Mr. Loft don't let anybody be comfortable. Nay, I'd not do it. Ambrose ate his bread and cheese, and said nothing at all. He saw her on the 3rd morning. He was tying in the espaliers on the kitchen garden wall when she came through the arch, a young woman in a grey walking dress, alone, with a shawl over one arm and a book in her hand, plainly escaping. She stopped when she saw him. Then she did the thing that decided the entire course of that fortnight, though he did not know it yet. She came forward and said, "Good morning. I am sorry, I do not know your name." "Reed, Miss Amos Reed." "Then good morning, Reed. May I sit on that bench, or is it wanted?" "It's not wanted, miss." She sat on it and opened her book, and he went on tying in the espaliers with his back to her, and his heart going harder than the work warranted. And after 10 minutes she said, without looking up, "You are doing that wrong." Ambrose stopped. "Not the tying is very neat." She came over and stood beside him with her hands behind her back and squinted up at the wall. "You have brought the leader down too low. It is a pear, it will sulk. My uncle grew pears against a wall at Ashby, and he said a pear is like a proud man, it will not be bent quickly, it must be bent 1 year at a time." She glanced sideways. "But you are new, are you not? Please do not tell Mr. Ferris I said so. I have no business at all in another person's garden." "No, miss," said the Duke of Thane, "you have not." "Quite so." And she went back and sat down and read her book, and after a while he heard her laugh out loud at whatever was in it, once, quietly, and then be embarrassed about it and look up to see whether he had heard, and he pretended he had not. That was the 3rd of June. By the 6th he knew that she was up at 5:30, that she took her breakfast alone in the morning room, and had twice sent her plate back untouched, and that she wrote a great many letters and burned some of them. By the 8th he knew about Tibby Marsh. Tibby was the scullery maid. 14 years in the place, 30 or so, slow of speech, with a stammer that got worse when anyone looked at her, and the wettest, coldest, most unregarded work in the entire house. Her hands, from lye and soda and the pump, had been cracked open every winter for as long as Ambrose could remember, which was to say that he had never once remembered them, having never once seen them. On the 8th of June, he came in for water at the yard pump, and found Miss Rosamond Keel working the pump handle in a grey dress, with her sleeves pushed up, filling a copper for a woman who was standing by with her red hands wrapped in a cloth, and her face crumpled with distress. Miss, you mustn't. Tibby, you cannot put those hands in soda today, and you know it, and if Mrs. Ottery says otherwise she may come and say it to me." Rosamond set the pail down and straightened. "There. Now, this is goose grease with elder in it and a very little beeswax, and it is not physic, it is only grease, so nobody can call it interfering. You will put it on tonight, and you will wear the old gloves I gave you over it, and in the morning you will show me. Do not thank me, only show me." "Th. Do not," Rosamond's voice was perfectly gentle, "show me, that is the payment." Ambrose stood in the archway with an empty can in his hand, and could not move. He knew, in that moment, 3 things with complete precision. He knew that he had been master of Thanewood for 14 years, and had never learned that woman's name. He knew that Rosamund Keel had been in his house 6 days and had. And he knew that nobody, anywhere, was watching her do it, that his grandmother was at cards in the Yellow Room, that the Duke was believed to be in London, that there was not one soul on the estate whose good opinion could possibly be of the least use to her. She looked up and saw him. "Read, good. Take the other handle, would you? This copper is a monster." She pushed her hair off her forehead with her wrist. "And you may tell the Gardens I have been officious in the kitchen court. They will enjoy it." The Duke of Thane put down his can and took the other handle. After that, he stopped pretending to himself that he was conducting a test and admitted that he was simply following her about. On the 10th of June, he learned that she was teaching Job Halliwell to read. He came into the potting shed at 9 at night for a coil of twine, and found the two of them at the bench with one candle, the one-armed yard sweeper and the future Duchess of Thane, and a slate between them with the horse is in the lane chalked on it in a large, careful hand. Job went the color of a brick. "Miss Reed, it's not." "Sit down, Job, you have not finished." Rosamund did not so much as glance at the door. "Read, if you have come to be shocked you may be shocked outside. If you have come for twine, it is on the nail behind you. And if you wish to learn your letters yourself, you may come Tuesdays and Fridays at 9 and welcome. And if you tell Mr. Loft, I shall know it was you, for there are only 3 of us here." "Why Mr. Loft?" said Ambrose. "Because he has told Job twice that a man who cannot sign his name has no business asking for a rise, and then twice refused to let anybody teach him," she said. "And I am a guest and cannot quarrel with the steward of a house I am eating in. So we do it at 9 o'clock in a shed." She turned back to the slate. "Again, Job, the horse, not house. Look at the middle of it." Ambrose took his twine and went out and stood in the dark among the cold frames for a long while. Loft had been his steward for 9 years. Loft was efficient. Loft saved him something like £600 a year. Ambrose had signed his accounts every quarter without reading past the totals, in the comfortable certainty that a man who is not cheated is a man who is well served. On the 12th of June, his cousin Cashin came to Thanewood. Ambrose had not expected that, and it very nearly undid the whole deception, because Cashin Thane had known him from the cradle and would recognize him at 20 yards. He spent that day and the next in the far pinery with his hat down, and it was Job who reported, over bread and bacon, that the Duke's cousin had arrived unasked, had drunk a good deal of the Duke's claret, and had spent an hour and a half walking in the wilderness with Miss Keel. The wilderness at Thanewood was 3 acres of ornamental woodland, with a summer house in the middle of it, and the summer house had a lattice at the back of it, and behind the lattice there was a bed of Portugal laurel which had wanted cutting back since April. Ambrose cut it back on the 14th, at 4 in the afternoon, when Cashin took Miss Keel walking again. He was not proud of it, he has never been proud of it, but he heard every word. "So you will forgive a man for being blunt," Cashin was saying. "You have not seen him. You have been here 12 days and he is in London, and that, Miss Keel, is exactly what your life will be. He does not speak. He has not spoken in 11 years. He broke off with Sabra Vane in 3 lines on a half-sheet of paper and never told her why, and she is Lady Corvin now and still does not know. That is the man your father has sold you to." "My father has not sold me." Her voice was very level. "I am 24, and I signed the agreement myself. I should be obliged if you would say sold to instead of sold by." "Then let me be blunter still." A pause, the creak of the summer-house bench. "There is another way. I am the heir presumptive. I have expectations and I have present means. If this match does not go forward, my position is a great deal easier, and I am prepared to be extremely grateful. £2,000, Miss Keel, in your own name, settled where your father cannot touch it, which is more than you will ever have of your own from Thane, for he will settle it on your sons and keep you on pin money like every other duchess in England. 2,000, and all you need do is go home in July, and let it be known that you found the Duke of Thane's manner unbearable. The world will believe it in an instant. They will pity you and laugh at him, and he has earned it. Ambrose stood in the laurels with the shears in his hand, and found he had stopped breathing. For quite a long moment Rosamond Keel said nothing at all. Then she said, £2,000 would portion 2 of my sisters. It would, and you would want it known that he was unbearable. That is the whole of what I want. Yes, she said, I see. Another silence, a wood pigeon somewhere. Ambrose's hands had gone cold. Sir, said Rosamond, I have been in this house 12 days, and I have not met the man I am to marry, and I will not pretend to you that I have gone to bed happy. But I have learned a good deal about him from other people, and I find it does not match your account, and since you are his cousin, and they are his servants, I am inclined to trust them, and not you. His servants. His servants. There is an old groom here who says his grace came out at 2 in the morning in a blizzard 4 years ago, and helped dig the sheep out of the Ashby drift himself, and stayed till noon. There is a woman in the kitchen court whose sister was kept on full wages for 1.5 years while she was ill and could do nothing. Nobody in the stables is afraid of him, and everybody in the house is afraid of the steward, which tells me exactly where the coldness in this house comes from, and it is not from the Duke. Her voice did not rise. As for Lady Corvin, a man who ends an engagement in 3 lines, and then lets the world call him unaccountable for 11 years, rather than say one word against the lady, is either a fool, or he is protecting somebody. I do not think the Duke of Thane is a fool. Miss Keel. And as for the £2,000, now something did come into her voice. You are asking me to be paid for telling lies about a man to whom I have given my word. I have 4 sisters and a mortgaged house and £11 a year of my own, sir, and I want you to understand that I know precisely what £2,000 is. I have known what money is since I was 15 years old and the men came for the pictures. A rustle. She had stood up. You may keep it. And you may go back to the house and tell her ladyship whatever you please about me. But if you ever offer me money again, I shall write the whole of this conversation down and send it to the Duke in London, and I shall sign it. Cashin Thane laughed unpleasantly and said something about romantic girls that Ambrose did not catch, and then there were footsteps going away on the gravel, and then there was nothing for a long time. And then, from inside the summer house, very quietly, the sound of a woman crying for about 1.5 minutes hard, the way people cry when they have been holding something up for a long while, and then blowing her nose, and then absolute silence, and then footsteps going back to the house at an ordinary pace. Ambrose stayed in the laurels for the better part of an hour. He should have ended it that night. He knew it. He had his answer twice over. He had it in a scullery maid's cracked hands and a slate in a potting shed, and £2,000 refused in a summer house by a woman with £11 a year. Any decent man would have walked into the house and washed and put on his own coat and told her the truth. What stopped him was a stupid, cowardly human thing. He could not think how to say it. So he waited one more day, and because he waited, he found out the rest. On the 15th of June, he saw her leave the house at 8:30 in the evening with a covered basket, and go out by the kitchen court, and take the field path east away from the park, away from the village, out toward the old drift lane where there was nothing at all but 3 cottages and a lime kiln. He followed her at 200 yards. She went to the last cottage, the one with the sagging thatch, and knocked, and let herself in. And Ambrose stood in the lane in the long light with the swifts going over, and read the shape of that cottage the way a landlord reads a building. The thatch gone at the ridge, one window boarded, the garden dug and planted, a stack of sawn kindling by the door that had been cut by somebody who was not strong. He waited 40 minutes. Then he went and stood at the open window. There was a candle. There was a very old woman in a chair with a shawl round her and a plate on her lap, and Rosamond Keel on a stool beside her with her sleeves up, combing the old woman's hair. "And did you eat the eggs, Mrs. Ambry?" "I did, my dear, and there's 2 left, and Nancy comes Thursday." The old woman's voice was thin and cheerful, and Ambrose knew it. He knew it before he had any idea how he knew it. "You're not to keep on. You've your own to see to." "I have nothing whatever to see to, and you know it. £11 a year and no dressmaker's bills, for I have exactly 2 gowns and I like them both." A pause, the comb going through. "Mrs. Ambry, I must ask you again, and you must let me. Why were you struck off?" Mr. Loft said the list was too long. 9 years' service, and a pension promised by the last Duke, and Mr. Loft said the list was too long. "He said it were a matter of economy, dear, and he wrote it down in a book, and there's an end. It's 8 year gone." The old woman shifted. "I don't blame the boy." "You must not call him the boy, Mrs. Ambry. He is a duke, and I am to marry him in September." "Was a boy when I had him," said Mrs. Ambry serenely. "And he had the croup at 4-year-old, and I sat up 11 nights with him, and his mother dead and his father in London, and he would not sleep unless he had my hand. 9 year I had him. He wrote me a letter when he was 20 in his own hand, and I have it in that box." A small, unbothered laugh. "He'll not know I'm here. Great men don't know. It's them beneath 'em that does the knowing, and the ones beneath them again that gets forgot. You'll see, when you're a duchess. You'll have to make a list of your own and keep it in your head, for nobody'll keep it for you." "I have begun one," said Rosamond Keel. Outside the window, in the dusk, the Duke of Thane stood with both hands on the sill of a cottage on his own land, and could not speak, and did not try. He did not sleep. He sat over the harness-room lamp in the smock of Amos Reed until 3:30, and at 4 he woke Braddon the steward, and by 6 o'clock the Duke of Thane was in his own clothes in his own library, with 9 years of pension books on the table in front of him, and his hair still wet from the basin. Mrs. Ambry was not the only one. She was the 4th name in a list of 11, struck through between the years 15 and 18, each with the same note in the same neat hand. Economy, by order. 2 of the 11 were dead. 1 was in the poorhouse at Marfield. Ambrose read the whole list twice, and then sat back and looked at the ceiling of the room where he had signed those accounts every quarter for 9 years without turning past the first page. Mr. Loft was sent for at 7. He came in confident, because he had never in his life been sent for at 7, and assumed it meant something good. He was out of the house by 9, with a fortnight's wages and no character, and the books went to an attorney in Marfield who found, within the month, £840 that had never reached anybody it was written down for. Loft had the great good fortune that the Duke of Thane declined to prosecute, on the single condition that he never again take a place of trust in England, and the Duke's attorney made certain of that in a manner which required no court at all. Cashin Thane was next, at 9:30, and that interview lasted 4 minutes. "You offered a gentlewoman £2,000 in my house to slander me. You may either leave Thanewood within the hour and never write to me again, or you may remain and hear me repeat the whole of your offer, word for word, at the Marfield Sessions dinner in September, where I shall be sitting between two magistrates." Ambrose did not raise his voice. "You have the hour." How Cassion's face had gone slack. "Who told you? She swore she would write to you and sign it. Did she write?" "No," said Ambrose, "she did not. She protected me from it, which is more than I have ever done for anybody." He opened the door. 55 minutes. By 11 o'clock a cart had gone out to the drift lane with a thatcher, a load of reed, a joiner, 400 weight of coal, and a promissory note in the Duke's own hand, restoring to Mrs. Hannah Ambry the pension of £30 a year promised her by the 6th Duke, arrears computed from Michaelmas of the year 15, payable at once and in full, with interest. He did not go himself. He wanted to. He had wanted to since 8:30 the previous evening, with an urgency that had frightened him. But he had understood, sitting over that lamp in the dark, that if he walked into that cottage this morning, it would be for his own comfort and not for hers, and that the thing he owed her was not a visit but a pension. At noon he sent word to his grandmother that the Duke of Thane had returned from London, and would be very glad if Miss Keel could be persuaded to come to the library. She came in at 10 minutes past. He was standing at the far window with the light behind him, and he watched her cross the room, gray dress, straight back, chin up, prepared to be civil to a stranger, and he watched her stop dead in the middle of his carpet. He saw it arrive in her face in 3 separate pieces: the puzzlement, the recognition, and then the understanding, which was terrible. "Read," she said. "Ambrose Thane." He came forward and then thought better of it and stopped where he was. "There is no Amos Reed. There never was. Mr. Ferris took me on as a favor, and my grandmother told the household I was gone to London, and I have been in the gardens for 13 days for the express purpose of watching you when you did not know you were watched. That is the truth of it, told badly, and there is a great deal more of it, and you shall have every word." Rosamond Keel had gone entirely white. "The pear tree," she said. "I told you that you had done it wrong." "You did, you were right." "The pump." Her voice was rising now, and she was not stopping it. "You held the other handle. You ate your dinner in the bothy and let Job Halliwell tell you that this was a cold house. You stood in the potting shed door on Tuesday, and I told you not to tell Mr. Loft, and I asked you not to tell the steward, and you are the Duke of Thane." "Yes." "The summer house," Rosamond said. Ambrose did not look away. It was the only thing he could give her. "I cut back the Portugal laurel behind the lattice on the 14th, he said, "with the deliberate intention of hearing what my cousin said to you. I heard all of it. I heard the £2,000, and I heard what you answered. He made himself finish it, and I was still there afterwards, when you were alone. I did not go away, and I should have gone away, and that is the thing in the whole business that I cannot put any decent face upon at all." She turned her back on him. She stood at the near window with her arms folded hard across herself, and the clock went on, and Ambrose stood in the middle of his own library and waited, because there was nothing else on earth he was entitled to do. "Do you know what I have had?" Rosamond said at last to the glass. "For 9 years. One thing. I have had no money and no season and no beauty to speak of, and 4 sisters to see to, and a father who sold the pictures off the walls and then wept at me about it. The one thing I have had is that whatever I did in a room with nobody in it was mine. It belonged to me. Nobody was keeping the account." Her voice cracked straight across. "And you were keeping the account, the whole time. Every single thing I have done in this house for 13 days, Tibby's hands, Job's letters, your cousin's money, that old woman's hair. I did all of it not knowing I was being marked, and now I shall never know again for the rest of my life whether I would have done any of it if I had known." You would have, Ambrose said. You cannot possibly know that. No, he agreed. But I can know this, and I shall say it once and then be quiet. I did not go to that cottage this morning. I wanted to. I have wanted to since 8:30 last night, more than I have wanted anything in 11 years, because that woman sat up 11 nights with me when I had the croup, and I have not thought of her name since I was 20 years old. His voice was not behaving. I did not go, because going would have been for me. So I sent a thatcher, and 400 weight of coal, and 30 pounds a year with 8 years' arrears instead. And Mr. Loft is out of this house without a character. And there are 10 other names on that list, and every one of them will be found and paid by Michaelmas, whether you ever speak to me again or not. That is not an argument, Miss Keel. That is only the account, since you say somebody has been keeping it. Rosamond's shoulders went down. 11 names, she said. 11, 2 are dead. Which 2? A laundress called Pert, and a man called Sowerby who kept the ice house. Ambrose swallowed. I have written to their people this morning. It is not the same thing, and I am aware that it is not the same thing. She turned round then. Her face was wet and quite unashamed of it. I am going home, she said. Yes. On Tuesday, to Keel Ashby to my sisters, and I shall tell my father the truth, which is that the Duke of Thane has behaved unpardonably, and that I have not broken the agreement. Her chin came up. I have not broken it, sir. I want that understood. I have given my word, and I do not take it back because a man has hurt me. But I will not be married in September out of an attorney's letter, and I will not be married to a man who has watched me from behind a hedge and thinks he knows me. So you may write to me. In your own hand, not your lawyer's, and I shall answer, and we shall find out over some months whether there is anything here besides 13 days of you deciding what I am. That is more than I asked for. It is a great deal less than you deserve, Rosamond said, and I am aware of that too. He wrote to her 61 times between June and the following May. They were not, at the beginning, letters anyone would have envied. His first ran to 9 pages and was almost entirely an account of Sabra Vane and a yew hedge and 11 years of not speaking, told plainly, because she had earned plainness. Her first answer was 2 pages long, and the second page was about pears. By August they were arguing about the poor law. By October he had sent her every one of the 11 names with what had been done for each, and she had sent back a 14th name he had missed, a woman at Ashby, from her own father's ruined household, and asked, with great awkwardness, whether he thought a duke's affianced wife might be permitted to pay a laundress's debt out of her own future pin money, and he had written back 4 words, "Pay it from mine." In November she wrote, "My father asks daily when we are to be married. I have told him it is not his business, which has not been said to him in 30 years, and appears to have done him good." In February she wrote, "Mrs. Ambry has taught Job Halliwell to write his name, and he has written it to me on a whole sheet of paper. I have wept, which is ridiculous, and I am sending it to you because I have nobody else to send it to who would understand. And that, sir, is the most alarming sentence I have ever put on paper." He rode to Keel Ashby in April, and asked her in her father's overgrown garden, on his feet, without a settlement in his pocket, having left the attorneys entirely out of it for the first time in the whole affair. "There is a condition," Rosamond said. "Name it." 2. She was holding both his hands, and her eyes were bright. "Tibby Marsh does not go back to the scullery. She has 14 years in that house and hands that will never be right, and there is a still-room at Thanewood standing idle, and I want her in it at a still-room maid's wage with a fire. Done the other. You will never again," she said, "find out what I am by watching me. If you want to know a thing about me, you will ask me, out loud, and take the answer. That is all. That is the whole of it, and it is the only thing I shall ever ask you for." Ambrose Thane, who had not asked anybody anything in 11 years, said, "I promise it." And then, because a promise is worth nothing without a first payment, he asked her, then and there, standing in a bankrupt baronet's ruined garden, the question he had gone into the gardens in a smock to avoid. "Do you love me?" "Not yet," said Rosamund Keel. "I am extremely close. Ask me in September." They were married in September, in the church at Thanewood, with the pear trees on the kitchen garden wall bearing for the first time in 9 years. Mrs. Hannah Ambry, 87, was carried up the aisle in a chair by 4 gardeners, and sat in the second pew in a new black gown with her pension book in her reticule, having refused absolutely to leave it at home. Job Halliwell signed the register as a witness, in his own hand, slowly, in front of 200 people, and the Duke of Thane waited for him without the least appearance of impatience. Tibby Marsh watched from the still-room window, because she could not have borne the church, and there were flowers on the still-room table that morning that nobody would admit to putting there. And Mr. Ferris got his glass house, and was heard to say, for the rest of his life, that he had once had the Duke of Thane under him as an under-gardener for 13 days, and that his Grace had been willing enough, but had known nothing whatever about pears. Ambrose asked her, that September evening, standing at the library window with her hand in his, and the last of the light going off the beeches, whether she had ever forgiven him for the laurel hedge. "Ask me in about 40 years," said his wife. "I shall want the whole of that time to think about it." She had a great many years to think about it, and she thought about it in a house that was never again called a cold one, with a husband who asked her out loud, every day of his life, what she thought and what she wanted and what she needed. And she kept her list, and he kept his, and neither of them ever once had to be reminded of a name.